Hello and welcome to Love It Film. My name is Jamie and thanks for tuning in. Today we have a great guest. His name is Alexander, and Alexander is a film composer. You know, the likes of Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman. We have, what's his name, who did Oppenheimer, Ludwig, something or another. Well, Alexander is in their field. He makes music for things. He makes music for O.C.D, which was, of course, the short film with starring Raz, Fritz, and Stephen Oink. He also did a Batman Beyond short film, which is incredible. We have Chris. How you doing,
Hi
Chris?
guys, I'm doing good. I'm excited for a yet another crew of another member of O.C.D. So this is quite exciting. We obviously have not had a composer on yet, so new grounds for us. Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped.
Me too, me too. And I think it will be really interesting to get the view of somebody who makes music for movies because it's so important.
It's really something like we don't know much about either, if you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't even think about it, like the amount of work that goes into making a soundtrack for a film based off its story, based off its editing. There's so many different things. So we're gonna find out today how this man does it, what's his process. We're gonna ask all the good questions because we want to be as good as him one day. We want to hire someone.
Well, too bad we don't know how to make music.
No,
But we
yeah.
can hire someone, yeah.
We don't even know how to make films, man. You know, it's. But look, that's why we're interviewing. That's why we're interviewing these people today. So, yeah.
I'm excited about it, and I mean, music is so important in film. What is Superman without the music? It's just Chris Reeve flying really slow. So I mean, it's important. It's what films are about. So I think we should just head right on into it. So without further ado, here is the interview with Alexander. Very, very nice to meet you. Just to let you know, we have Chris in the call as well, who runs the page just as tech support if anything goes wrong on the Zoom. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, man, and it's great to meet you. How are you?
Pleasure to meet you as well. It's Jamie.
That's me, Jamie. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I think I've been conversing with Chris up until now.
Oh yeah, you have indeed. Yeah, I usually do the interviews. So Alexander, you in fact, as you know well, are a film composer. You're a songwriter. You're a singer as well. How did you get into the world of music?
You know, I've always loved, before even music, I think I loved movies and cinema and just like the cinematic experience, the escapism of it all. And then at some point, probably starting in middle school, the cliche is, of course, like Star Wars would probably be a good example of it. Lord of the Rings would be a good example of it. But I started to notice, oh, the music is a big part of why I love the energy and the emotion of the escapism is through the music, like the swells of the heroic themes and the evil themes and everything in between, the sadness, the funny stuff. The music had such a subliminally powerful effect on the audience, myself, and so I just got fascinated. I was playing I was playing piano like since first grade, but I actually didn't really love like practicing piano per se. Um, until I started writing music in sixth grade, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, I actually now I can't get away from the piano. Now every time I come home, I'm running to the piano just like to like, initially just bang stuff out, and then eventually as I learned more music theory and more sort of conceptual harmonic stuff, what the limits of what I originally thought I could do grew and grew.
I get you, and it's like when you started with the classical stuff on piano, the cool movie stuff was there. That's why you were finding it boring. It was coming, man. It was coming. I love your music. Of course, I've seen O.C.D. I had Luca on the show, and then I had the writer as well, Connor, only last week. And that movie is it's so good, and the music especially, the tension, the build up for such a kind of crazy subject as well. I think the music you made for it is really, really good in terms of just building the suspense. And like, I mean, I agree as well. Music, if music wasn't in film, there wouldn't be anything. I mean, Superman flying without music would be so boring, you know? So, I mean, I love your stuff. I mean, how did you get into O.C.D? As in, are you friends with Luca, or did you just hear about the project? Or
Yeah, and also credit to Luca, because actually the thing I always say though about a good film is that a good film should be good without me first. Like it is the mistake that the music will save it. Like if the movie isn't already funny without the music, if the movie isn't already scary, sad, whatever the emotion is, I'm just there to like bring it to that that last level, to let it fly. But like if it's drowning, I'm just gonna get it back up over water, is what I say. And so Luca, when I watched the first version, he hasn't. I think there's been a few films where he does temp score with the edits, but with this one he didn't. And the first time I watched it, I could hear the music in my head, but I didn't need like there wasn't any music, but like I could just the flow, the pace was already so strong, and so I was able to just bring that extra level of frenetic energy to it to top it off. But yeah, I cold emailed Luca like back in 2018, and we met up at my studio and we talked, and then I scored a short film of his called Gold, and I've scored all of his films ever since, about six of them now.
Well, that's cool. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more too about, say, just music with a film actually being good. That's an interesting way of putting it as a composer. You're just kind of giving the movie its wings to fly away, and it's already great. So that's really interesting. A question I'd have about just, say, composing in general would be when you start on a project, typically is the film already made, or are you given the material straight away and like this is going to be the film? Do you have like a general theme for it?
It depends on where the project is in production. Some of my long-term collaborators, since I've worked with them before, they'll throw me the script, so I'm already kind of aware of the script. Sometimes I'll even write some music beforehand, depending on the situation. Um, Last year, I was doing a feature with a very long-time collaborator, and I actually scored while they were still editing it. I was like scoring just a couple select scenes just to start to get the sort of the palette of the sounds together. Um, usually it's a locked cut. Usually like they lock the cut and then I go and score it just because I'm busy enough with projects where it's kind of hard sometimes to commit to just sort of score stuff as it comes in and out. I've done that occasionally for projects, and sometimes it doesn't end so well because like the bad side of that is the good side of it is you do get in there early and kind of put your fingerprint on it very quickly without temp music or anything. But the bad side is like you'll be editing a scene, you'll be scoring a scene, you send off that draft, and then they give you a new edit, and that scene you were scoring is like so much shorter, and so now the filmmaker has made the call
Oh
just not to
no.
have a not to have music, and that's happened now a couple of times, and so
Hmm.
but everything it's yin and yang. It's kind of like a give and pull of life of like there's benefits and there's negatives, and it depends also on the commitment. It depends on like how long I've worked with the person. I think somebody I haven't worked with, I don't know if I'd be as like committed to just like trying stuff. Whereas you start to learn the language of certain filmmakers, like they like certain rhythms, they like certain sounds. Like I have one filmmaker who like doesn't like piano, and I'm a piano player, so
Really?
like that's an
Wow.
interesting. I kind of have
That
to
is
like,
interesting. You would never
yeah,
think
I
that
kind of
with film as well. I mean, piano is in everything, especially if it was Interstellar or whatever.
you'd think so. Like, yeah, it's. I think it's the hard transient that I guess they don't like. I think it's a little punchy. Now I think there's some
Mm.
soft pianos that you can kind of like I have had pianos in some of their scores before. I've kind of just done it in sort of a. I've kind of had to reverse engineer my way into it, like super reverby, very light, very soft, kind of like or like
Mm.
reverse piano maybe even. So there's things like that that you can still kind of work around it. But also sometimes if they just don't like an instrument, I'm not going to like press them. Like we'll find another. I
Yeah.
also like to keep things interesting. So piano is not um, my be all end all when it comes to writing music.
And has there ever been a moment when you were working with a director or something, and they're suggesting doing your music a certain way with a certain instrument where you're like, oh, that's terrible. I don't want to do that. Does that ever happen, man? Don't name names. I'm
um,
not getting you in trouble,
no,
but
no, no,
yeah.
no. Uh, Honestly, I would say my general philosophy. I guess it depends on if I'm already like halfway through the project and they suggest an instrument that I wouldn't have thought of. Usually, I'm game to try stuff. Usually it's more just like at the beginning. I'll be honest with the filmmaker. If I don't think a genre is my strong suit, is my forte, like I don't know, like scream metal or like Indian music or something. Like I'm not necessarily overly prolific. It's not that I couldn't do my version of that, but I'm not like it's these aren't like there's maybe a handful of genres that I'm not like super adept at and don't necessarily have the interest in getting particularly better at. I kind of have my niches of genre and stuff. I actually just bow out usually, even if they were initially interested, and even if I was initially interested, because my philosophy is I always want to make sure like the right film composer. Hopefully it's me, but I also I guess I want to make sure that the right film composer is there. And if I don't think I don't think I can provide that level of quality. I want to bow out sooner than later and not like you know make things worse.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you can't give it your all, what's the point in even doing it? And I mean, just in terms of what you've done and your experience and stuff, it's super interesting. I was looking at your website and it was saying like in 2010 you interned for Hans Zimmer. I mean, even if you're not into film composition, everybody kind of knows who Hans Zimmer is. What the hell
Oh
was
yeah.
that like? Like were you with Hans? Was he like showing you how to do stuff, or was there a bunch of you guys? Like, what was that like?
I was pretty much at the like the low level of just being a runner, getting his coffee, like doing dinner runs, doing general like cleanup stuff, like putting water
I'd do that
jugs
as
in
well. I
different
mean, if you
facilities.
told me I could do that tomorrow for Hans Zimmer, I'd be like, yeah.
It's they I don't know if they still have that program, but yeah, usually it was like there was like four or five of us. It was unique for me because for some reason I got to do it when I was like a freshman. I had just come out of like my first year at Berkeley.
Oh wow.
Most people there were seniors, so they were older. They were kind of like about to like get out into the workforce, and so they were possibly trying to attach themselves to other adjacent composers at his studio because he has like a bunch of different people to kind of work out of his studio. But I was kind of just there like I'm not graduating anytime soon, so I'm sort of just a fly on the wall. Um, Probably the most fun story was there's one like Saturday. I think I was doing like a afternoon shift, like a 1 to 9, and one of the older. This is why I mentioned the older runners that I think was graduated already or about to graduate. He was so bold as to ask Hans. He was like writing a cue for a feature film, and he just asked him. There's like he's kind of like being really bluntly honest, which is true. Like all of us were bored out of our mind. There's nothing to do. Can I just like sit here and watch you? And he's like, sure. And slowly, like two or three of us just like kind of like go behind the couch, like right next to like there's like a smaller couch and there's a couple other larger couches in this very large room of his. We were like in the couch right like just 2 or 3 feet away from him, working on his workstation. And I think the thing that I found there's like two different sides of it. One was the good part was he worked very slowly, but like he would do things sometimes in a way that was so simple, like just moving a MIDI note up chromatically up and down, like as if something that I would do. Like it feels almost like childlike. It's like, oh, the great Hans Zimmer is also having to just like very sort of basically, elementary, like moving MIDI notes around the thing to see if it works. But then the more overwhelming part, which he's very good at, and I work very fast and I always have a hard time slowing myself down, is he was so overwhelmingly methodical. Like it was slow, but it wasn't slow like it's bad. It was like you could just tell he was just listening and tweaking, like the simplest of cues. I mean, it was actually a pretty big cue, but like the small adjustments he was making every so often as he'd play and stop and play and stop and move around. So it's kind of like a tale of two cities. It's like, okay, I can do this. Like this guy is doing certain things that I've done. So he's a human and like I can write this music, he can write this music. But then there's just like the larger journey of like, yes, there is a simple entry point, but there is a huge world to sort of play in and explore and to really refine down the skill set will take decades.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the holy grail for somebody who wants to be a composer as well, interning for Hans Zimmer. I feel me, I'd be anxious, man. I'd just be like, oh God, I hope I don't cough too loud beside this guy. He'll kick me out of here. I want to see what he does for this movie. I mean, when you were there, was he working on a big film or anything like that, or was he doing something for his concerts or?
He was working on a James L. Brooks film. I think it was with Paul Rudd and Reese Witherspoon. I can't remember the name of the movie, but that was those the two actors in it. And then I think he was working on a few other ones as well, but I can't remember off the top of my head what they. Oh well, no, it wasn't. Was it Ringo? Maybe he was working on Ringo as well. It was around
Oh, wow.
2010. So basically, whatever
Yeah.
he was doing just before 2010 or around 2010, that was what he was working on, um, give or take. There's also one very early morning where he wasn't doing it, but I think somebody else was there to like go through the mix of the Tron score. And I was like there setting up like the breakfast buffet, and like Jeffrey Katzenberg, like I think came around, but we kind of cleared
Whoa.
out after that, like because we're very much like we're in the shadows. We just kind of do our thing, and we kind of like get out of there. Um, and I think I think there's one day that I went into the room to like get something for Alan Meyerson, who was his like sound mixing engineer as well, which was cool. Um, but yeah, just all sorts of odds and ends. And then randomly, some random composer will just be like, I need a burrito, and then I just go run get a burrito, stuff like that. Because very, very, very silly.
I mean,
I think Steve
how
Jablon.
else do you learn though? Like, I mean, you got to be around these people. I mean, as well in 2013, you also interned for Danny Elfman, right? He
Yes,
was doing a big concert for the Tim Burton movies. I'd say, was that similar again? Like, were you allowed to sit with him or anything like that? Or
that one I didn't really talk as much to him, but although I did meet him, that one was more hands-on only because I actually did something. I wasn't just a runner. I basically my job was to take actually the poster back there is for the concert that it was for.
Oh, cool.
Because it was Danny Elfman's like concert from the films of like Danny Elfman's music from the films of Tim Burton. And I
Mm.
guess they had a bunch of paper scores because most of these scores are from like the 90s, and no one had ever converted them into digital notation like Finale or Sibelius.
Oh,
And so
wow.
somebody's got to do it. And one of those people was me. I was one of like the three interns. I think I did like 60% of the transcriptions. And so you by eye and hand, you're like taking these gigantic scores that are handwritten and like taking note by note and transcribing the entire thing into Sibelius into the score order. My first piece was the overture to Nightmare Before Christmas, which was like surreal. Just like taking
Yeah.
that over and over again. And sometimes you'd get a little bored, like because it's just like, is that an E or a D? Because sometimes the note was like kind of mudgy, but you kind of look
Mhm.
at the whole chord structure. There's really large, score paper. You're like, okay, yeah, most of them are E's, so I'm going to say it's an E. And you write it down, and then once in a while, you'll just play it back in Sibelius. You're like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm transcribing some of the most my childhood music. Like this is so crazy. Um, and then basically we take all of that and we give it to Steve Bartek, who was his orchestrator, because basically the whole point of this was it wasn't just as an exercise; it was to take all these separate cues, and so that then Steve Bartek and Danny could like, you know, having that as set up as it was to create like a suite of music. So it wasn't just one cue. You could like create a 10
Mhm.
minute piece rather than just 2 minutes, 3 minutes here and there. But they needed someone to like get it into, because at that point everybody's using Sibelius and Finale to create scores now. Nobody's really hand sketching stuff as much anymore.
That is awesome, man. I can't imagine. I mean, I've no idea how to transcribe, but I just the idea of doing it for like such iconic movies, that would give me goosebumps, man. It's just so cool. I mean, getting it back to you though and stuff you've worked on some cool things. I mean, my favorite one of your scores is from the Batman Beyond short film.
Oh,
You
very
see,
cool.
I was listening to a lot of your stuff on Spotify, and I didn't know you actually worked on a Batman short film, and I was like, Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis. I love Batman Beyond. I watched the animated show years ago, so I was like, oh my god, I gotta watch this thing. And the movie was awesome, as I'm sure you know. But your music was so cool. What was it like starting that with, say, such an unlimited potential of 2050s Gotham?
It was super cool. Yeah, gratefully, Michael Yu, the director, the writer, and the producer of it, he actually found me. I'm still actually to this day not entirely sure how he found me because it's still very rare. I'm usually the one who knocks, as I say. I'm usually the one hunting people down and finding people and getting involved. But he found me, which was really cool. And yeah, we had a talk conversation about basically we want to pay some homage to what the score was in the 90s, which did have like guitar and did have electronic elements, but still kind of bring it into even a more new age, even more modern approach, more electronic, more contemporary. And so yeah, I was kind of straddling that. There is like a guitar, rock guitar in there with all the different synths. Um, I was always pushing for a lot more like arpeggiated synths, which for Michael that reminded him too much of the Flash, and so we constantly had a back and forth about how much arpeggio I was allowed to use. Um, and then like the industrial drum kind of stuff, because yeah, you wanted to, just like with the sound designer creating the sound design, the music should reflect the world. And obviously it's such an amazing world that they created. Obviously, I wish I could have scored it the way that you see it, because what I scored was like mostly green screen. I didn't see much of Neo Gotham until
Oh.
basically I was in theaters.
I
That
didn't even
happens all the
think of that,
time.
man. I didn't even
Yeah,
think of
yeah,
that. It just
it
looks
happens
so
all the
beautiful,
time.
you know? Yeah.
But he showed me like different shots or different like little bits and pieces, and so much of it you just use your head and you trust that the filmmaker is going to deliver, and so that you hopefully you're like pushing past the visuals of what you believe it's going to be, so that it strikes the balance. But yeah, kind of industrial drum, percussion, various synths. There's one like very atmospheric pad that I found in Omnisphere that I immediately like was attached to, and that became like a big bed of the score, and like this one like three note motif that sort of became the theme, and then I created a slightly more sophisticated theme in the end credits. But those are the big elements, and then of course the sort of the romantic um, melody with Melanie that is introduced with like the pianos. That was also important to kind of some. I'm a big fan of sort of a diverse amount of sound, or like kind of like dichotomy of like there's this industrial grungy sound, and then there's the more lighter sound. I think that's always important to have in a score, so that your ear doesn't get tired after a while.
Makes sense, yeah. I really liked that melody you had at the end with the sort of kiss scene with Terry and Melanie in the movie. It was such a different departure from earlier on where he was fighting and stuff like that. It was cool, man. I mean, for me, I love film scores. You know, like I mean, most people when they're walking around and stuff, they're listening to pop songs, rock, whatever. I'm listening to film scores and weird ones, man. Like the other day, to be honest, I was listening to like something from do you know John Debney, the film composer. He did like movies like Liar Liar, Bruce
Oh yeah, yeah.
Almighty, stuff like that. Like the piano. I wouldn't even know what to call it, the melody or motif. It's just so soothing to me, man. And like even that, they're kind of inspirations for me with creativity. What genre of film score inspired you in terms of what you write and what your taste is?
I think if I had my druthers, like if I only had to like pick one, maybe two genres, it'd be, big categories, but fantasy and sci-fi. Like I do love escapism. I just love the big sweeping kind of worlds that can create, partly selfishly because like usually the music is gonna probably take it in a direction that's more interesting than like a super grounded drama. However, I have scored some grounded dramas that actually requested like really kooky music, which I love. But in general, I just love to write music that will really take you in a peculiar direction because I can write sort of very traditional, lovely piano string music to the cows come home, but like I definitely yearn for the more fantastical, the more escapist. There's a screenwriter friend of mine that he actually put into words sort of how when my music is really cooking, he said that my music sort of sounds like something enormous is eminently coming is kind of like how it sounds, and I think that kind of puts into words the feeling. I like my music to feel, whether the world is big or not, I like my music to feel like there's a larger world around this universe that these people inhabit essentially. And so
That's
that
the best way.
best,
Like,
yeah, and that best fits a fantasy or a sci-fi because that's when the world fits the size of sometimes my music. That's the problem. It's actually the struggle I have with some filmmakers. Like I write music too big. Like a lot of times, like my first pass, I throw the kitchen sink, as I say, and they have to like pare me down and slowly cut out a lot of stuff because it's too much for them. Too many notes, like in the movie Amadeus, too many notes.
yeah, exactly. I think bigger is sometimes better with music, you know, like Back to the Future, Robert Zemeckis. I mean, I'm a nerd. I'm watching a lot of behind the scenes stuff since I was a little kid. And I remember talking about him with Alan Silvestri, and he was like, well, the first note I gave Alan was, this movie's very, very small. So I need you to make music, make this movie look very, very big. So I'm a fan of that, man. I'm a fan of that. I like that you're doing that. Is there like a dream film you or dream project you have in mind that you would love to do music for? Hard question,
I
I
think,
know.
yeah, it is, yeah, it's a hard question. Man, if I had my own Lord of the Rings trilogy, a Star Wars trilogy of my own,
Yes.
I think for many years, I've wanted to like do a Marvel movie. Actually, specifically, my birthday is Cinco de Mayo, and usually that's one of the first big blockbuster weekends. Every weekend, like usually there's a
Mhm.
big Marvel movie that comes out that weekend. My dream someday, I guess, more specifically, which sounds strange, I want to score the big blockbuster movie my birthday weekend someday. Like to me, like that comes around as often as an Oscar. So to me, if I got that movie, it's like winning an Oscar. Seriously, like if I ever score, like it used to be Harry Potter. I think it was like the first Spider-Man came out like that first weekend of May. So yeah, like for me, I know it sounds strange, but like yeah, if I could score the number one big blockbuster in the first week of May, that'd be crazy.
That's interesting. Cinco de Mayo is the first weekend in May. Yeah, we don't have that here in Ireland. Is it? What is it in particular? I've heard that in like movies and
I
stuff.
don't know. I and
What
I
is
don't
it?
I don't think I don't think it has anything to do with the holiday. It just seems like I've noticed over the years my birthday weekend. For instance, okay, this is a good example. My 18th birthday. Um, so like that weekend, the May 5th like birthday weekend or whatever, that was the first Iron Man. So I guess
Oh
for
man.
me, yeah, and I had like a bunch of friends. We all went to see the movie, and which has started the whole Marvel universe. So it's like I guess for me that subliminally has like tracked with like
Hmm.
someday I want to score
You absolutely
Marvel's
will, man.
May
Manifest that.
May movie.
I
Yeah.
believe. I believe you could do it. You know. I mean, I feel like you're a fresh voice in music. Just from what I've listened to, is I listen to a lot of it. Just as what I listen to. You know, and I think it's really fresh, especially in movies like Batman Beyond, and particular in O.C.D. My favorite track you were doing is when uh, Raz, who plays Owen in the movie, is crawling on the ground just trying to get to the ice cream in the fridge, and it was just so different, you know. So I love what you're doing, and I mean, what you're doing can be very different too. Even on your Instagram, I saw like you had a musician on a violin in your studio. I mean, what's your studio like? Is it just whatever goes? You're throwing in different things depending on the project.
Depends on the project. It depends on the time. It depends on the money, quite frankly. So like,
Yeah,
I
that's
had a
fair.
horror
Yeah.
feature. Yeah, I had a horror feature last year that I was able to get some money for. So we recorded like a live violinist. Actually, Nancy, she did the violin. She actually played viola and cello on it. And then she also helped me contract a double bass player for a horror feature that I scored last year called The Mannequin. And he came in. I wrote a note so low he had to detune the lowest string in order to actually get to the note and come back down into it. Because I did like kind of like a pitch, kind of like bend into a note, but the note was below a low C, so you had to go to a B flat. And like there is no B flat unless you have like I guess an Uber extension. So you had to just one time he just like detuned the whole thing. And so sometimes I'll record people in my studio here with a mic. Recently, I've used a subscription service called Musiversal that gives me access to like a bunch of like live players just around the world remotely. So I don't have to do anything. They record it from their own home studio setup. Violinists, trombonists, drummers. It's amazing, and it's just fantastic for composers, especially indie composers. Like not every day you can go and hire an orchestra. I did do that on one project. It was called Harry Potter. It was called Harry Potter. It's called Severus Snape and the Marauders. It was a Harry Potter fan film. It went crazy
Hmm.
viral back in 2016. It has like 13 million views now, still I think on YouTube.
I've
But
seen that
I rec-
actually. I didn't know that was you. That's crazy.
that that was
Yeah,
me.
that's
That was
good, man.
me
That's good.
back in the day. The end credits of that was recorded by a 65-piece orchestra in Budapest, Hungary, remotely.
Oh wow, wow. So
That
you
was a
can,
real treat. That was a real treat.
I'd say so. You can really do it anywhere, and man, like you're doing projects on like say big streaming services like Netflix, Showtime. I think it was AMC. I read as well. I mean, is there any pressure that comes from that? And like you don't have to get into detail and stuff because people getting into the industry who maybe want to be whether it be film composer or even director. Like I'd imagine there'd be a bit of pressure when it comes to these big studios coming in.
Um, I think on some level, but honestly, weirdly, I get more frustrated when I'm like just doing stuff that isn't going to see the light of day. I think there's a
Mm,
huge exhilaration when you know that the music you're writing today and like a month from now is going to be seen by millions of people. I think like I guess
that
I
makes
I work
sense.
the opposite. I actually get less stressed when the pressure is on, and I get more stressed when nothing's happening.
Wow. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah.
I mean, OCD in particular, that was, I don't think you guys expected that to get, say, 1.6 million views. Now, that's blown up big time.
No, no, that like I was hoping within a month maybe he would get to 1 million if the stars aligned, quite frankly. But yeah, I mean Luca has definitely like picked up on something. I know he's dialed in a lot of stuff like on TikTok with promotion, but also the beautiful thing is, and this doesn't always happen, it's a really good film. Like genuinely,
Yeah.
it's a good film. So it's not like because I have had other projects where like they do well, but I don't know if it's commiserate with what they with like it just happened to be on a good platform, right place, right time. What's so cool about O.C.D is the fact that like it is getting this much success and it's good. Like it deserves like the ratio of what it deserves is like right there, and that's what's really cool.
Yeah, and you can be proud of it because you know in your heart it's actually good, you know? In terms of general, um, say, composers and musicians who have lived, is there one of them who you, now they don't have to be alive, but is there a composer or musician you would love to learn from, if alive or dead?
Oh, you know what? I would go probably right now just because like a lot of people ask me like who's your favorite film composer, and I always go to the
Mm,
old school ones of John Williams and Hans Zimmer and Danny Elfman and Howard Shore, James Newton Howard, et cetera, et cetera. But honestly, the one I would like to know because it's like the only more modern film composer who I feel like when I listen to his scores, I'm like, damn, that's so cool. Very rarely, usually I'm just like, cool, like they did a score, but whatever, I think I could do it. But this guy is like, man, this guy's doing some cool stuff. Daniel Pemberton, he did the Amazing Spider-Man soundtrack. He did the King
mm.
Arthur, Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie. That score is insanely good. He just does really clever orchestration, and the way his scores sound is really fresh. It's what I try to achieve. So I feel like I see myself a little bit like an older version of myself in him. So I'm like, okay, how did he get there? What is he doing? How can I be better? Because I feel like he's striking at what I'm trying to strike at more than anybody I know.
I love him too, man. I mean, Spider Verse. I'm trying to remember. I mean, the main motif from Miles Morales that went viral even on TikTok. I think 2 years ago with that like "Good Morning New Yorkers." I don't know if you remember that. It's just so
Yeah,
fresh. I
yeah.
love it as well. I haven't seen anything else he's done, but I love Spider Verse's soundtrack. It's just
Oh,
so
I
new.
would I would check out the Guy Ritchie King Arthur. Apparently, nobody
Oh,
saw
I'm
the
gonna
movie,
write
but
that
me and my
down.
best friend, we loved it. But his score, not only are there much like old, like folkloric like
Hold on a second. The Little
medieval
Richard and King
songs.
Arthur. I have seen this. This was a
Oh
couple
yeah,
of years ago. It only came out, and it was I can't remember the name of the actor, but it was the blonde guy, big
yeah, he was
fella,
in
very
Anarchy,
very visually. The
Sons of
movie was
yeah,
yeah.
Jude Law and Sons of Anarchy. Yeah, the guy from Sons of Anarchy, Hunnam, I think. Yeah, but yeah, the score. My God, like that score is one of my favorite scores. It's so good.
I think I have to re-listen to that. Is there a genre of film score that you haven't done that you would really like to do? I know you've done horror, you've done sci-fi now, you've done drama, things that are a bit more obscure as well. Is there anything you haven't done that you'd want to do?
There's probably shades that I haven't done. Like, I guess actually funny that kind of segues to maybe a good thing to mention. Like right now, I'm slowly writing an album of my own music because of this very reason, because I haven't done all these genres. Like I really haven't scored a proper Lord of the Rings movie because like no one's gonna hand me a $200
Who's
million
gonna
movie
do? Yeah.
just yet. So like I'm right now like writing like sort of Celtic, sort of medieval sounding, rustic medieval high fantasy music. I'm writing like huge epic action trailer kind of stuff. I'm writing sort of ethereal, mystical music, um, like dystopian sci-fi. Like basically, I'm trying to write the kind of tracks that I want to get to eventually, and because I haven't had a chance to write for them myself, I'm kind of going Thanos mode. Like I'll do it myself. Like I'll just write the music so I can show people I can do it, even without the picture. Kind of like put the cart before the horse a little bit, but in a good way.
That's the best way to do it. And I mean, if you're looking for Celtic or Gaelic or Irish stuff, just come to Ireland, man. I mean, that's where we are. Love and
I
find. It's
will.
just everywhere
I'll
you
soak it
go,
up.
the green fields. You feel like it's Lord of the Rings or How to Train Your Dragon or that type of vibe. You get inspired quick. In relation to the interviews, we always say at the end, just a general question. Now, it's a very hard question to answer because I'm sure there's lots of facets to answer it, depending on if you're a writer, director, or whatever. But if somebody was starting out, they want to be a film composer, what advice would you give them?
Work with other young, talented filmmakers
That's
on
good
their
advice.
projects, and then keep working with them until unless you guys part ways. But yeah, I mean that's what I've been doing. That's how I've scored two features. My longest filmmaker that I've worked with for over 15 years. I did all the shorts, and then he did his first feature, and then I just did a second feature. That's the first time that's happened so far where there was a first and then a second. I've done a lot of first features for people. Um, yeah, just I mean, like find people that you think make the kind of stuff you like to that you think you could work well with. And early on, also beggars can't be choosers. So actually, like this is more refined, like an intermediate level, because now I'm at the point where I'm kind of filtering what I like to work on. But like early on, I'd actually just say, just just work and find out because what I like might not be what they like. So it's like it's not my answer to say in general in specificity, but just the general advice of work with college student filmmakers on their theses, like a bunch of them, as many as you can, honestly. Like that's where like just start doing the thing. Don't study it, just do it. I mean, study as you do it, do both, but study just never is going to prepare you for reality. Reality is, what a person's actual budget is not based on a percentage of anything. It's what they've got, what they can pay you for. And early on, you're going to work for free anyway. So just work for free and score stuff and build up a portfolio, and then and then hopefully through that you've learned what you want to do more of, and then curtail and refine sort of the people you reach out to those genres and those kind of films.
Man, it makes sense, and I couldn't agree more. Like, I mean, even I went to film school for a year or two, and I've since then actually talking to people who are directors, actors, writers, like yourself. You're actually the first film composer we had, but all these
Oh,
people
very
coming
cool.
in who are actually making these things. It couldn't be any further from what they teach you in college or school. I mean, it's a completely different ball game. So, really is good advice. It really is. Get into it. Actually, just do it. And man, I couldn't thank you enough for coming on today. I mean, as I said, we haven't had a film composer before, and it's such an interesting insight to what it's like in the world of music, because you guys don't get enough credit. I mean, the music in film, in my opinion, is some of the most dramatic, powerful pieces of music ever written. I mean, like Schindler's List, whatever. It just makes you feel the emotion so much more. So, I mean, I respect the hell of you for what you do, and thanks for coming on, man.
Honored to be on. Honored to be the first film composer. Yeah, just talking shop about it. I love it.
We actually have Hans Zimmer later on. I think he's coming in an hour or two. So.
I'm the warm up act. I'm getting things warmed up.
Yeah. You're number one, and I think it's Danny Elfman after him as well. You know those guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks for coming on. Alexander was cool. What a interesting guy. I actually had such a good time talking to that bloke.
Yeah, no, he was just very like it's very like I was gonna say it doesn't actually feel like we were doing an interview. We were recording an interview. It really just was like a really nice conversation you guys had. Like he said, talking shop, and you know, me just listening in, I was like, this is so interesting, you know.
It was, and you said it right. I think it was right after the interview. It was before we pressed recording this. He looks a little bit like the guy who played Riddler in Gotham.
Oh my god, he kind of does.
He does, yeah.
No, he does. That's why I said it, because I was like, you know, the second he joined the call.
That's not an insult, Alexander. The dude who plays Riddler, good-looking guy. He's not.
No, we were also big fans of Gotham, so that's why.
Huge fans of Gotham. I even DM'd Bruce from Gotham and tried to get him on the show. So we'll see what happens.
Come on.
Come on, David. All right, 3 movies. All right, let's say Inception, Interstellar, and The Dark Knight.
Oh, no.
Soundtracks. You can only keep one.
These are all Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, you can only keep one. So that's Inception. That's what I say. Interstellar and The Dark Knight.
Okay, so let's quickly break it down, all right? The Dark Knight is, I love it, but it's the lowest on this list because...
What?
No. Inception is one of the most iconic ones that's been around for the longest time.
Big disagree here.
I'm going to say... I know, but I love The Dark Knight, but in terms of... I think in terms of... like, people are going to recognize Inception before they recognize The Dark Knight. But I'm not saying... I do kind of prefer The Dark Knight, but... I think Interstellar, number 1, 100%.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm torn. Interstellar is just so good, you know, the cornfield track, you know, going through the maze.
Look, think about how much you heard the Interstellar soundtrack on social media, YouTube, and the film came out.
I'm still going Dark Knight. I think it's biasly, you know, because it's, I mean,
favorite
wrong Batman, but come on.
He had that on the ready, guys, on the ready. Okay, so let's say not favorite movies, favorite film composers, because we were obviously a good few was mentioned in that interview. Like, what's your go-to? Like mine, obviously it's Hans. You know, do love Elfman. I've loved Ludwig Göransson stuff. He's done The Mandalorian.
He's great. Yeah.
He's, I think, did he done Oppenheimer?
Oh, he did. Yeah, he's doing The Odyssey as well with Chris Nolan.
Yeah, he's his new Hans Zimmer, but that's another topic. But Zimmer definitely number 1. I'm trying to think. John Passano. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his wrong.
Spider-Man, Daredevil.
I'm surprised he's actually, you didn't mention him because, like Daredevil soundtrack. I'm bringing this up as well because it's coming back in 2 weeks.
Born Again.
Iconic.
Here they're using the original intro with John Passano's team.
Good because you know that's Daredevil. You know, and then like similar to Alexander, I have my classics like Danny Elfman and stuff like that.
Alan Silvestri, Back to the Future, and Avengers. You know,
he actually.
Lilo and Stitch, he even did. You have a soft spot for Lilo and Stitch.
You know, but wasn't Junkie XL? He done all the Elvis songs, didn't he? He done like versions.
I think he did a few mixes. He did that very famous Little Less Conversation Elvis thing.
Yeah. But definitely like Hans. I think for everyone, like most people say Hans when you ask favorite composer, and it's the most recognizable.
Like most people know Hans Zimmer. You know, he mentioned Daniel Pemberton who did Spider-Verse, which is
he's an upcoming one. Well, not say upcoming. He's probably been around ages, but I mean like in terms of like. Spider-Verse is certainly helped.
He's fresh.
Yeah, definitely. That works great as well because I listen to Across the Spider-Verse's soundtrack when I'm in the gym, and that scene where Miles Morales is getting chased on the train by Miguel, is the tension in that scene is crazy. And if you're on a treadmill listening to that, you're pumped. you know, or even the scene when just before he gets chased and all the Spider-Men are like staring at him. That's what a good composer does. And I think tension, bringing this back to Alexander, O.C.D, that scene when he's crawling and stuff like that. I posted so much on Instagram now when we were doing interviews from highlight reels. But honestly, it's so good for something that's a short film as well. Like you wouldn't. I'm not saying that. You know, of course, there's always going to be effort put into the soundtrack and stuff like that, but it's like you know, I hope they have him for the feature O.C.D, because like, you know, he didn't need to cook this hard for something that might not have, like you said, been successful, but obviously he's been friends with Luca years. He'd done a fantastic job. Yeah, like I think I had that as one of the videos I posted where it was like, O.C.D, you need to be able to not only show that visually, but you know, audio visual as well. You know, you got to be able to let them not just see what O.C.D, but also feel it, also hear it. And I think that's what Alexander does.
That's true. That is very true. And he's great at what he does, and I can't wait to see what he does next. And I think that's the end of our podcast, Chris. I do have another question. This baby ogre's over there. What's that about, man? It's weird.
Look, okay, basically,
we have new episodes every single Friday. Please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. You would be surprised how much that helps us. If you like our stuff, if you like the show, a review would be great. Thanks.